Hello everyone, welcome to FilmCopac. Today we have with us one of the few contemporary voices in Bengali cinema who has made us proud at the world stage with his astonishing frames and compelling stories about the city we all belong to. We have with us today Mr. Aditya Vikram Sengupta, who has given modern Bengali cinema a new and a very distinct voice. He's a director, cinematographer, and graphic designer. His first film, Asha Jaoar Majhe, or The Labor of Love, released in 2014, which premiered at the 11th Venice section of the Venice International Film Festival, winning the Fediora Award. It also won the National Award for the Best Debut. The film completes its 8 years in 2022, and here we are to talk about it. We also discuss his latest film, Once Upon a Time in Calcutta, which also premiered in Venice, and we are super excited for its India release. Aditya, thank you for joining us today. It is an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, thanks.
My first question to you, Aditya, is about Asha Jaoar Majhe, or The Labor of Love. We wanted to ask a very obvious question. I'm sure you have answered this more than once in the past, but we still wanted to know about how you first conceptualized this idea of your debut film not having any dialogues, and how difficult was it to carry this decision all through the movie?
So it's something that I think developed very naturally, and it was very organic. So I was very inspired by this short story that I read by Italo Calvino. And his stories are so visual, I really wanted to translate that into moving images. So when I was writing the film, it obviously became about me and my surroundings and whatever I have experienced. And then gradually, a large part of it became about my memories of childhood and my parents and food and everything that I saw. And, how they just did things for each other without really saying anything to each other. And because the couple never meets, the most obvious thing was that, they don't end up speaking. And that kind of emerged as the predominant treatment of the film. So it was a very natural and organic process.
When I watched it first in the London premiere, there was no expectation what's happening. We were thinking like, okay, there will be some dialogue, or is it all true without any dialogues and all? And kind of by the middle of the film, I was feeling that this couple, kind of economic class they belong to, you might be thinking that they are voiceless in today's society today, and that's why you are not giving dialogue. And I was thinking that at the end, if they meet, they will have some conversation. So at any point of time, did you think, was there any provocation for them to talk when they meet eventually at the end?
See, of course, there could be a million possibilities, right? And the decisions that we take and the choices that we make at a certain point of time is what we feel about it at that point of time. Had I been making the film now, would I make it like this? I'm not sure. Because, even I'm changing as a person.
Right.
And at that point of time, at that very moment, I did, and, I expressed whatever I felt and whatever felt right to me and instinctively. And I think that is the thing with any artist. So it's like, I paint a picture today, and if you ask me after 8 years, would you paint this picture the same way in 8 years? The answer would be no, because my skill would have developed, or I would have gone, or my skill could have deteriorated. I could be thinking very differently. My point of view on that subject would be very different, on life, everything. So I don't think none of these were conscious, calculated decisions. But after the work is out, it's always open for dissection and post-mortem, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
There's another thing. Of course, there's no dialogue, but what I also felt is you have purposefully not put any characterization for these two the two leads. We see them, but we really do not get inside their heads. Was that also a thinking process you had while you were, writing the screenplay?
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't feel the need to get into their heads given the treatment of this film. Again, had I been making another film, like a different film, or had I been making the same film today, I might have been getting into their heads deeper. For example, in, you've seen Once Upon a Time in Calcutta.
Yes.
Right. And it was a very painful screenplay for me to develop, because I really get into the characters and their psyches and, and all of that. So the story and what I'm trying to say demanded that. And, that is what drives the narrative. But Asha Jaoar Majhe was not a film like that. It is something that I had seen as a child. So my point of view was also as innocent and, black and white as what I saw. So I wouldn't get into the minds of, my parents or the adults who I saw around. So it was, more from that point of view. It was a very simple, basic sort of a representation.
I wanted to ask how difficult it was for you to kind of communicate your vision to the actors who do not have any dialogues as such. What was, how was their process of adapting to the screenplay?
See, as far as I can remember, we just had a lot of fun on set. And we had a very small crew. Like all my films have a very small crew. Asha Jaoar Majhe had the smallest crew. We were about, I think, 10, 11 people. That's it. So, so we were just having a lot of fun. We were talking, chatting, talking about things. And we were really in that space, living that space also. And of course, there was characterization. Of course, there was, a lot of thought process that went into Ritwick and Basabdatta when, when he does whatever he does, his constant habit of, say, constantly exiting and entering again because he's forgotten something or whatever, even while he's sleeping, to keep waking up and, once he's shutting the window, once he's doing this, once he's doing. So all of these things, and even how, say, little things like how Basabdatta would extinguish the agarbatti and how Ritwick did, because religiously you're not supposed to blow an agarbatti out. Right. So it also kind of, so each of these little things, if dissected, will tell you a lot of, will give you a lot of information about these characters, so there has been characterization. It's not like there hasn't been characterization. And, but they need, it was not translated into verbal dialogues, but it was certainly translated into action-oriented dialogues.
Okay.
Dialogue is when there are, so, but it wasn't difficult. As far as I can remember, we just talked and jammed a lot on the characters and what he would do and how he would do, the body language. So those were the things that actually end up communicating. So, we spoke a lot about those things.
And tell us, I think I have read in one of your earlier interviews that the sound design of the film, and I think I have heard you saying that there are quite a few of sound designing that you did even before, the visuals were thought about. So how did that happen, and how did you conceive that the overall sound design of which sounds filter through the canvas of the film and we hear?
It was a very roundabout process. So a lot of elements came in from all sides and made this happen. And it's the same with all my films, because for me, it is, so making films and writing is a way of processing life for me. Right. So I process life, or I process interactions and, people and feelings and everything through whatever I write and through whatever I make and build. But a lot of people process it differently. A lot of people process it person to person, who are, there are very emotive people. They're constantly fighting and, they're hugging and kissing, and there's a lot of expression of love and hatred and all kinds of things. I can't, people necessarily can't do that all the time. And they have various channels of processing these things that they see or hear. So, so these are all our senses, right? So there's taste and there's smell and there's eyesight and there's sound. And for me, it's as important as, each one of them are as important as the other. So all of these senses together make us, or make us perceive, right?
Yeah.
So even when I'm writing a film, it's like I'm creating a personality. So this personality will have all these five senses.
Of course.
So there will be sounds that this personality hears. There'll be visuals that this personality sees, tastes that this personality will taste, or smells. So like in a film like Asha Jaoar Majhe, or say, for example, Jonaki, there I've actually consciously tried to translate smell on the canvas, just by using visuals, by the dampness, by
the apples,
all of these things.
Oranges.
So it's all about these senses coming together. So there's nothing like the visual comes first and then the audio comes later or any of that. So there are lots of stories that we hear through audio. Like, for example, if we wake up to the sound of a bird every day in our house, how many people actually go and look for the bird? But we are listening to this bird. It's a recurrent sound. We know it's going to happen every morning, and it's a part of our life every single day. But the visual isn't there. Or a hawker who passes. We've never really bothered to go out and look at the hawker, but we know that at this point of time, this person selling this thing will go and he'll shout. Even over here, when I'm staying in Bombay, there is a hawker who passes, and I still don't know what he sells. But he has a fascinating call, and between 12 to 1 he passes. And so if I'm filming myself in the house, I will have that sound, and that sound comes at that point of time. So so these are stories that, these sounds have stories, and a lot of these sounds come first. And then we get inquisitive about the visual of it. And then we go out looking for the visual. So same with the film as well, where we hear someone, some leader of a labor union giving a speech, something that we've heard, but we've never seen. But over here, I've kept something heard as heard. I've not bothered to imagine it or go out looking for this person, because the beauty of it is that.
So that is all from a cinematic perspective, or that we do not hear these voices, like a hawker's voice you are saying. I mean, I have not actually heard things like that I think in any Bengali films or contemporary Bengali film. I'm hearing like, SHARE Shoy, SHARE Sholo, that kind of comes in your films. That's hardly being there. So is it only a cinematic part of it, of not sanitizing anything, or you have a political stand to it that these are also voices that will feature in my films?
See, again, all these lines are completely blurred. So cinema is not separate for me than life. Life is not separate from the politics of it. Right. So we cannot help but be political. Whatever we say, whatever we do, how we behave is political. So these things, I cannot isolate any of these things. That I'll isolate myself from my politics or how my life is, and I'll make a film which is not my life. So at least I'm not the person who can do that. But of course, there are people who would do that, and that is a personal choice that they are making. But I'm unable to do that completely.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, Shubhadeep, you were asking something like that.
Yeah, I think just wanted to talk about the sound design part only. You explained it so nicely. There's this constant use of Shehnai in Asha Jaoar Majhe when we start with the starting frames and the ending frames. In both
not just in Asha Jaoar Majhe, it's also in Once Upon a Time. It begins with the Shehnai. The credit rolls with the Shehnai.
Yeah. So and it is both beautiful and haunting at the same time. What I personally feel. So what was your thought process on conceptualizing the use of Shehnai in Asha Jaoar Majhe or in Calcutta?
I think because it's beautiful and haunting. It's exactly what you said. and it also sounds because it's a wood, it's a wind instrument. It actually sounds like the breath of a person. It sounds like breathing, And when there are longer lines played on the Shehnai, it actually kind of borders into as if a person is crying, and then again he picks up his breath, and again. So it's a very human. It has a very human quality to it, I feel. So human that it actually seems like a personality or a person who's, actually crying or, breathing while looking at something. So, often when we see something, it takes our breath away and we sigh or we feel this heaviness. And if that could be translated into some musical form, in these parts, I felt Shehnai would come closest to it. Coming to Once Upon a Time and the opening, because it's a recurrent image that I have seen of a truck loaded with workers, almost like cattle.
Oh, we have seen that in the trailer.
Yeah, and taken from one place to another, especially early in the mornings. And every time I have seen that, I have felt, a deep sadness of sorts,
Absolutely.
And I don't know where it begins and where it ends. And the only way I couldn't translate it. I had to use the help of someone else who probably did it for something else that he felt, which I used.
So I had this specific question on that opening shot. This open trucks with construction workers, they're kind of being carried away. And I was thinking of these construction workers as these essential members who are the builders of the city.
Yeah.
Yet are never kind of accepted as members of the cosmopolitan milieu. So was you trying to hint at this flawed idea of urbanization that is happening, where these people are left behind, even though they are the integral part of city building?
See, my feelings are honestly as vague as each one of us.
Okay.
Right. And I'm no expert to pass any particular statement or impose a particular feeling, because these are so subjective and open, and the openness of it is what is beautiful, because like what you said right now. So the idea is to strike a resonance with people who do feel for this. And that feeling would be in a similar frequency, but it's wrong for me to impose one particular imposed frequency on that feeling, because, that is my feeling. So it becomes very judgmental.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So now this heaviness can be reinterpreted in many ways. That, these people are left behind, or even they have families, they are the ones building the city. But does building the city actually mean building infrastructure? What about the humans? Are the humans building? So there are millions of questions that, one can ask about life and politics and religion and, all of these things. But it's best that we ask these questions to ourselves when we watch it, rather than, like, I'm not the one to be giving these answers to my filmmaking. I don't like doing that anyway. So again, it's a process of, like how you're asking this question to me, I asked the same question by making that scene in the film. So it's a form of me questioning whatever I have seen, rather than giving some sort of a gyan or,
message.
Message. Okay. It's not that. Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about the scene of magic realism that happens at the end of Asha Jaoar Majhe. And, it kind of feels that through the film not having dialogues, it's also your way of acknowledging and tributing our past generations who never expressed love or romance with a lot of words, but it was more responsibilities and responses. And when that frames, that shot happens, I kind of feel you take them to that kind of a virgin pristine land where they're kind of a Bengali Bhadralok version of Adam and Eve. So is it like your way of also talking about those past generation where love is not necessarily expressed in words?
Again, I hadn't thought so much about it, but as far as I can remember, it was more to depict a commercial idea of love at that point of time,
Okay.
Because what is love? It's such a vague concept anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And there would be a Bengali middle class woman who could say that, he's never taken me for a film. Mm-hmm. For her, that is something romantic. Or কখনো সমুদ্রের ধারে হাঁটতে নিয়ে যায়নি. But if you actually think of it, it's just a walk. Someone is taking by the sea. How can that define love itself? It doesn't, right? So the idea was to translate a feeling that I felt in those woods.
Right.
And I keep going back to those woods because, it's a sense of feeling that I really cherish, and it kind of keeps me rejuvenated for a very long time. So even last year I went. So for me, it was entirely personal. It was entirely self-indulgent. A lot of people hate that scene. And, they would rather finish the film when, they just met or something. So there are lots of theories about it. But for me, I just did whatever felt right, And I just wanted to transcend them into a space or a feeling that was above everything else. And, and I had to do that cinematically, right? So I had to take the help of nature and what is available to me in order to do that. And so that's when I resorted to how I felt when I was in the woods and how I would, and that was the reason why I did it.
Right. Okay. For Asha Jaoar Majhe, as I have watched, or Jonaki that I have watched, even the trailer of Once Upon a Time in Calcutta appears much more accessible. Is that the case?
So I don't know accessible or not. This is a very dialogue heavy film again. For me, the representation of the city was through people and through different mindsets, because city is what? City is, there's a geographical aspect to it. But most importantly, it's the people who make the city.